Okay, how are you? Um, Let me float this on top. Float on top. Today, I have a head cold, but I wanted to talk about the right the right fit, the right approach. I said this is a fairly ecumenical field in terms of what you could do. You could work in commerce, you can work in the arts, you can work anywhere where that you don't have to work in it. You can make it a hobby. You can try it out as a profession. You can leave your boring desk job for something like this. But there are a few things you need to have and be realistic about. The first is I remember the old seventh or eighth grade shop teacher said the right tool for the right job. Um, yeah, this is kind of a rule of thumb in a non-creative culture, but you might find new uses for a tool. You might have the tool helping you with ideas of what to do next with it. And what else about this? And the world is so in combination. So many hybrid forms are combining, being established, that the job, the tool, you as a tool, you as a shapeshifter, you as a chameleon, this is all important. So let me start with the hustle per each gig, what you do, what people want, what people don't even know what they want, because this stuff is so new. They might not even know that they needed it, or they might not need it at all. But they once you give them the results, they go like, "Wow, we're richer, we're more entertained, we have greater profundity. That was a cool thing." One of the starts. So I'll start with commerce because commerce is not a dirty word in this neoliberal economy. It has to be a critical word to turn a buck, to chase the Yankee dollar. It's necessary. It's only only the slumming rich can pretend that they're above this stuff. So the hustle is real. And one of the greatest things in life, I think I mentioned this in a earlier dialogue, is to have the hustle and have the dividends from something that's halfway interesting, halfway about yourself. And this way we get over Marx's sense of alienation of the worker from the products of their labor. So, using these, and also, of course, for those who are awake, there has been for many years, and it has accelerated in the 20th century, and now really accelerated even within one generation, this idea of de-skilling the older generation. That this is what is behind cryptocurrencies, NFTs, trying to level the playing field with the old farts and crack into their markets to earn a living, to pay the rent, buy a house, have a family, have pleasure in life. And there's nothing wrong with that. So let's go on with kind of a hustle. The critical thing you have to be aware of is a sense of taking things with a grain of salt. When have you become too calculating? When have you become a bean counter, kind of triumphing over your nascent creativity? When has it ceased to be fun? When is it like building bridges or splitting the atom, which I think are profound and wonderful things in themselves? Here is a project for Rolf Benz, who makes these fancy 20, $30,000 sofas, German company. And I was making a pitch to them in New York. They're a German company. And when they came into town, we would make these pitches on systems thinking. Is what a designer does. I don't like, tend not to like the golden egg. I prefer the golden goose who poops out the golden eggs. So here's an idea with their fabulous couches, their arrangement, their neo Bauhausian style. I said, why don't we think of putting these marvelous things in an immersive apartment? An apartment that would have wraparound sound and video, would have short throw projectors. Now, when you work in commerce, in general, you would like to have 20 to 100% more money than if you would work in the arts. Strange as that is, um, in a way, you're working toward, in the arts, you're working with and toward your culture, and hopefully the ideas are wonderfully expansive, and your colleagues are smart and beautiful and vivacious. And so, therefore, working in commerce where you have budgets and meetings and things like that, not often unpleasant, but it's a different hook. So I'm trying to, in an old fashioned pro capitalist way, with a grain of salt, manufacture desire. I'm here to manufacture the desire of these total immersive rooms. Projection scrim. I've done these before. I haven't been paid on the scale of what these things on the market would run. If you go into Best Buy and used to look at their home theater, I think they're all called home theaters now. And this should have taken off like gangbusters during COVID. I think it did to a certain extent, but now there's a reaction to it, this return the love of the analog. Um, Strangely, this is my first head cold in 2 years since the advent of COVID-19. Anyway, so you're in your room, you want an immersive experience, you want the media tuned to this, you can choose kind of a big blue chip type Hollywood film, or you can see your own experiments, you can have it in the privacy of your own house, it can be scalable. It's not unusual for even middle or middle class people to pay $2,000 for a screen. Flatness, I told you almost day one, I'm sick of flatness. I like images to hit roundness and shape. So here it is. Here's a photograph in Studio Nice. I work with a colleague out of this place. And what maybe this talk is about is, given the pervasiveness of neoliberal capitalist economies trying to reduce us into numbers, the rent has increased 33% in New York City. Um, we got to fight back. We have to continue to live fully, love who we're going to love, have dreams about some forms of material ascendancy, some not excessive. But it's nice to think, if you want so, to have a family, and you're not always chasing the Yankee dollar to increase that. So one of my okay, so this surrounds every single discipline you are studying at the university, surrounds the idea, the concept, the category of sales. First of all, beyond your pallid little GPA, you have to sell yourself, which is sadly, not that well adumbrated amongst the curriculum courses. And many people sadly think their GPAs will get them somewhere, which a good one will, but you have to unfortunately sell yourself. Second of all, In the case of de-skilling older generations and dealing with innovation and forging and being on the front end of the bell curve of new markets, which eventually get saturated, you have to sell ideas that have not been born yet. This is why I taught you SketchUp. This is why I think it's incredibly important to use the tools to get that. But back to the question, the right tool for the right job. What is the job? This is a commercial job in an interior with Studio Anise. Most of these interiors will could be anywhere from 100,000 to $1 million. The interiors. Then it is usually in Soho, Tribeca, Chelsea, downtown Manhattan, but also in the hotels around the world, the Mandarin hotels in Vancouver, in Dubai, things like this. Uh, the right tool. What's the right tool? First, the tool to hone itself is your creativity, your ability to not talk fast, but to talk in a purposeful way. Second, what kind of learned from my dad was seeing him design college campuses. You have to sell ideas yet to be born. It's not like getting a used car lot and saying this Nissan Sentra was only had two previous owners and it's got about 70K on the mileage and I really, none of that. It's not standardized. And I hope one of your takeaways, if especially if you're frustrated by myself and my teaching method, which I keep telling you is Socratic, in trying to get you into the right tool for the right job with the right creation out from the job, the tool, the creation outward. Um, so this is scale. So you have to understand this. You're representing your ideas. So it's disheartening to me the level of almost asocial, antisocial behavior certain people put on with, I blame it on the screen, I don't blame it on you guys. Um, that you have to reverse that. You have to be articulate if you want to pay rent, if you want to get out of your parents' basement. Selling your ideas, moving all of this along, taking chances, taking risks, so forth. So, my little tool for this job is making a risk of preparing these documents with my cards at a party, very important. I'm right here near New York City. Um, Used to live in Brooklyn. Um, and I'm ready. I'm ready to enter the forest with the rest of the hunters to chase the mastodon off the cliff. All right. What do we use? We use these concepts. I have them formatted. I don't confuse for profit and not for profit. I want creativity to be at an all time high. I use dialogue with them in the terms of a lingua franca, what we can talk about, what we saw at the MoMA, certain shows in New York City. Um, yeah. There I go. I head into it. I go around with my linen suit, maybe a tie, something extremely important, guys. It's just be aware of yourself as a presenter. Don't mumble, direct eye contact, get in there. You got a job to do, and that job is to pay rent. Um, the urgency is up there. So, but my thing is to really, I'm with you, young people. In a sense, I do want to de-skill older people, the crotchety ones, the constipated ones, the people who think they've captured these markets and they're not going to leave it open for anyone. That's just my sort of pioneering, Viking ship sort of marauding attitude that there's a lot to do and it's fresh and it's young. Usually, the people I tend to hang around with in this is to hang around with people younger than myself to say, let's make a hunting posse. I have skills I can render to you. You have skills that come up through the ranks with new code, new tools. But let's not fetishize the tools. Let's deal with what's at hand. Um, clicking. Okay, so Rolf Benz, Studio Unit. We designed to integrate widescreen discrete projection system within your home, office, living room, and bedroom. Ta-da! Have I done this? Yes, I've done this in certain spaces, but not permanently. So here goes. Usually people are going to just march on over to Home Depot, not Home Depot, Best Buy. Yeah, Home Depot and get your cherry tree. Go over to Best Buy and take some screens off the rack and put it up themselves. They're not really considering interior design or any of other of these items to fit this. These are bullet points. We established the best electronic delivery system for the maximum immersive experience, i.e., short throw projector, blended seams, three possible 360 filmmaking, possible use of the VRs, which were 5 years ago supposed to explode onto the economy. Haven't quite. Zuckerberg changed his company name to Meta because of this and all of that. There's a saturation of form, so it's not yet happened. So I had a hunch that a rejection of a new media, like you guys are too young, but I remember the Palm Pilot way back in the 90s. It was kind of a cool thing to have. $200. Not that good. The syncing didn't quite work. I remember teaching at Bard College, and one of the students came by with essentially a tablet, but it was so low in memory, so it was unique. It was like, oh, I see this thing. It's a cool thing. How will the critical mass take this over and move it down the road? Maybe it would take a while. So that was mid 90s, late 90s. These things came out, and then they plummeted. And what kind of took their place was the iPod. It wasn't about visuals. It would be about music, which Steve Jobs and Apple Corporation literally stole the code from a Singaporean company named Creative Industries, and they had a big lawsuit later. But typical Apple, they knew how to design the UX UI. His love of Dieter Rams was still there. His love of the Bauhaus printing, Bauhaus aesthetic was there, and boom, when that showed up in CD players, all of these disruptive technologies showed up. So in the creation of this space, what I'm aiming for as the right tool for the right job is an immersive space. People maybe don't want to come home, maybe they and be isolated the way they were at their work. They might want to be in touch with their family around. They might love sharing things, and they might want it immersive more than putting these things on. Uh, Integrate your telematic, which is a fancy word for saying all things digital, including the cell phone. Um, Cell, internet, email, social media with entertainment systems. You've got this royal queue and all of that, but the UX is hideous. Scrolling through uh, the little alphabet to select your Disney over Hulu, over Netflix, over Amazon. It's just hideous beyond the belief. So we're aiming at better interface devices, uh, provide new human computer interfaces that incorporate the body and a voice into discrete command systems. This is using the infrared camera, good old fashioned Connect, which came out in 2006 or 7. I embraced all of it. I had like five or six of them. I had the code for it in Maximus P, and then typically Apple started shutting down the use of peripherals with their wonderful laptops. My laptop is more important than my car, obviously. It's it's a given. The way that your phones might be more important than your laptops. Uh, I'll carry that heavy thing around in a city to do work. The phone, yeah, it's coming up there. The Samsung S20 was the first real phone that had the muscle so that it could um, get all the apps, add to social media from my photographs. So we have a mashup, the right tool for the right job, said the old cranky shop teacher. And Steve Jobs' retort to that would be we're talking about all jobs, Steve Jobs. We're talking about all possible uses and functions. An old school guy like the cranky old, boy, was he weird, shop teacher. That's exactly the sort of person I wanted to de-skill. And then we've, I always take my hits at bureaucrats. Then they're just left with a bureaucratic notion of teaching and so forth. So here's my mashup. This is straight from my brain. Blend cost with style. Hide that man behind the curtain. Wizard of Oz. Integrate a functional messiness of the home electronic with minimal style. Blending the Bauhausian kind of antiseptic, almost constipated but elegant look, Dieter Rams with an interior. Uh, Provide a flexible means of upgrading a modular design. Some of these things include component placement and location, appropriate speaker placement, video display size, lighting of atmosphere, equipment required, electric requirements for equipment. So it's extensive. And nothing succeeds like a job well done to set up word of mouth. Uh, that's kind of the critical mass. People got clients have to be a little on the wild side to think that they're going to devote their precious square footage to an immersive space. So I had some elements where the screen would go up. I even worked on one of these in Singapore and Seoul, other places. I got some grant money to develop this with a couple of the companies in Seoul. Not creative in, they were interested, creative company, the ones who got robbed by Steve Jobs in Singapore, but Seoul briefly consulted with Samsung and LG. Like, what could we do? But of course, everyone's thinking of this. If you have a good idea, I'm not so pretentious. And if you think I'm a flake or a weirdo, I feel I'm not weird enough. If I have an idea, there's probably 600 to 6,000 people around the world having the same idea that I have right now. We need adventure, we need risk, we need craziness to solve major problems, to manufacture desire. That's wonderful. Think of how personal computers have transformed the world, and then personal cell phones. These are very disruptive technologies. And now, in a further discussion, we're talking about moral space. The notion now of something exterior to the self, like a prosthetic, but the amount of craziness, understanding, moral bearing. If you're crazy, you're usually empathetic. You empathize with the schizophrenia of the world, which is tough, but we're very much on the edge of CRISPR, biological engineering, and it's going to be devastating to talk about de-skilling people. At the fundamental germline editing level, it will de-skill. So these things are important to know that in commerce, the market drives things. People who use their brains are not disavowing the market like some faux Marxist academic who said, oh, poo poo, kids have to be critical about this. Well, kids also have to pay rent. It's just that's they can take their kit bag, they can double code on everything, and they can be vital in the world. And it's spurious to say to have a dislike of money, not in a mammonist way, but a dislike of taking care of yourself, being on the front line of de-skilling some of those old dinosaurs who will be put off to pasture. Hopefully respected as wise old sages and not fools and disruptors, counter disruptors of what is going on. And we need brainwaves on this, not just lip service from a comfy chair. We need to proceed along and understand just the empirical aspect of all this stuff. So that's seating, flexible in this whole thing. Here we have a lineup: controller, audio, visual, lighting, security. You even put security with it. As you can see, this is not like a total hermetic product like a cell phone. This is essentially a mashup, and you could, if you're a hacker, you could put this together yourself. Uh, Next, in your living room, we have host, event, spectacle, cultural production, art exhibit, workshop. Uh, there's a piece that I'm going to ask you to watch online. Baryshnikov is doing Cherry Orchard. Looks pretty interesting. It's running in the next 2 weeks. But you can watch that online. The hybridity of it, synchronous over asynchronous, all the Zoom things we've been doing, all the old timers who would put their windows over the top of their Zoom files and do something crazy and not know that they're caught on camera doing something, they do in the privacy of their own home. That's symptoms of de-skilling, which is good for you. I want you to be aware the right tool for the right jobs. We saw that movie where 50% of the jobs are going to go away. This is the hunting gathering spirit of whipping up jobs, whipping up desire for the products, commodities you're making. You can be a closet Marxist, you can be a closet social critic, but it's good to not do that from a comfy chair, but have a street creds. Do it from the street. Not be seduced by hype in the kind of pump and dump schemes that I think crypto has turned into, and other weirdnesses and the delusion of crowds and strange things. A children's crusade, as it were. So you see the home office, travel, telephony, digital archives, other entertainment, tech and education. We really had a critical moment with Zoom or meetings or whatever the basic thing was in the past 2 years that we used. In terms of UI UX, I got pretty tired with it, and not so much talking and seeing friends flat and seeing many friends and family or even lecturing to class. I got tired about the tyranny of synchronous time. Um, on a city bike in New York City, I'm on the train, I'm on the subway. I don't know if I can hustle to an appropriate part to get Wi-Fi or get some connection. Usually I do that by telephone, smartphone. So there's the layout, kind of the right tool for right job. Here's some of my examples. They did it in Korea. That was pretty stunning. We did it for a stage and then put it in an institution. Many, many, many times I tried to propose this to create, I called it a digital Agora. Uh, Agora. For University Stony Brook. Um, where people could meet and show their work and have lunch and just find these nodal confluences with a class schedule, which is now accepting asynchronous, like this class, with the synchronous. Did it back at Studio Nice with the projections in the space. I designed it in SketchUp, of course. Put it down in front of the client. And do you like it? Do you like this? Do you want to trim it? Do you want to, just holding their hand and trying to make them sign a check? My techniques are to design curve scrims. Here's another basic thing in a theater type white loft. I was at a white loft of friends of mine on Howard and Crosby, which I used to live up from there in Soho, and it has changed. Fashion companies, this, that, and the other companies. Someone opened up a pop up NFT space. This is another incentive. I don't know. I know I have a lot of Chinese nationals. I have a lot of other students, and I want people to be aware that the hustle's global. If you see or detect an opening, you got to go for it, and uh, come up with a design overnight. This is part of my spirit of continuing to draw, continuing to use SketchUp to work on ideas myself and then just file them away. I have all these ideas on Immersive Space. Here I'm trying to entice a client, a commercial client, say put their $30,000 couches in this, and my associate said we can't really pump this modular media room up over 10 or 20,000. I said, this thing would be more expensive than the couch. But again and again, people kept coming and saying, well, they can just go on down to Best Buy and have their super hang their screen. I walk around the city looking up into windows to see these gigantic screens, which are essentially immersive because of their scale. It is a struggle. It is a nice struggle. You have to be positive. You got to be hungry. You cannot be delusional. There's something in nature about the economy of hunting, or something like the amount of expenditure an animal makes toward nailing a quarry, as opposed to what they think is cutting their losses as an animal. Many people think that's where this vestigial thing about depression comes from, especially this research about the Neanderthals as depressive hominids. I heard it. I'll look up the footnotes. It's emotion is shorthand for knowledge. So we do have these vestigial emotions. Maybe it's a thing about hibernating, just cutting your losses, shutting down a little. But the hunt goes on. So I want you to be crazy hunters and stay up at night and doing these things, and try and make the soonest opportunity to go into a party, a conference, a gathering. Uh, I was at the Japan Society fundraiser last night. That was about $4,000 or $5,000 a plate tables at Cipriani's in 42nd. I didn't pay. But power hitters. Which again, grain of salt, people. Whatever you think is going on, don't be on that lemming march. Don't be on that lemming march to whatever people tell you about left, right, center sort of attitudes in your brain, and now you got to go over the right cliff. Be stealthy, be out there, be hustling. So I did the ground plans. I did versions of this. I researched the Benz sofas, or the Benz sofas, different short throw angles. The short throws I was looking for, which I spec'd out at B&H camera, and you can see it in their showroom on there on 32nd Street, 34th. Is The short throw was about 3,500 lumens, same as an Epson. You got to know what's under the hood, gang. You got to be a hacker to a degree. You can accomplish this by going to B&H, by going to Best Buy, by going to Adorama, by going to the wonderful commercial places in New York City and just asking these guys questions as if you're a customer and really you're kind of their competitor. So be curious, be charming. That's the one of the major things I miss is the degree of charm that is gone. Here's an Eileen Gray chair that she did with Le Corbusier. Some Rolf Benz chairs I found in SketchUp uniquely. And then the craftsmanship. This is mid-century modern, the type of look. And that's the end of this. I hustled, I showed, I demonstrated. It was for commerce. All right, into the arts, into a blend of the arts. What's the different right tool for the right job? Here's my class with avatars in augmented reality. What else are they doing? Yeah, so each one had like a doppelganger. I was going to try and big this up from off-the-shelf technology. Big this up with something new tech, something ubiquitous, such as the use of cell phone, spatial I/O, and then just see to what extent we could get this stuff up and going. Here's the famous Plato's Cave, which ironically Plato said writing's bad, man. Plato described why orality, telling a story, is better. Kind of strange because I reviewed the iPhone 1 for a magazine years ago when it first came out in 2006, 7. And I said, this is like a doorstop. The battery will last 3 hours. It's this, that, and the other bad with it. But it was pushed on the public and the behavior accepted it. So this is typical of what Plato was describing with his allegory of the cave. As you see the diagram there, the lemmings, the people are just seeing the image, the shadow of the goat. Written word is a made thing, not a living thought. Written text can't answer questions. Written text can have a discussion. Writing weakens the memory. Yes, 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 yes. Sour grapes, Plato. But he wrote it down, the contradiction. I dissed the first iPhone. I said, I can see its promise, but it's got a ways to go. Well, the ways to go was practically only 1 or 2 more years. The iPhone 3 and 4, the little boxy squarish iPhone 4 was the one that really took off, I remember. Did what it promised it was going to do. Just like the old fogies complaining about the internet. Oh, yeah. So they complain about the internet using the internet. What are kids coming to nowadays? All of this stuff. So we see this is the classic disruptive technology. Papyrus was expensive and very fragile. It wasn't until paper science came through from a tortured Chinese paper maker to divulge the secret on the Silk Road of paper making, that it went to Baghdad and Islam and then down up through the Amalfi Coast, some of the first paper places. But they had been writing things down on papyrus. And the old fogey said, where's this going to go? We don't know. That's another sign of disruptive technology and de-skilling. You basically need to de-skill people like me, people who have captured markets and pensions and jobs and things like that. And it happens every generation, but now we've compressed, as I keep saying, all of these effects into one generation. What was this on? Virtual reality innovation. So here's a bunch of projects on virtual reality. The thing for Rolf Benz was an immersive space. This is one on integrating virtual reality in a room. Who are the pioneers? Medical VR, yes, I do that. VR publishing, no. VR analytics, no. Virtual cinema content, yes. We've gotten out there with a 360 camera, used a type of what was the program a few years ago? It was on Steam. We used it to edit a film. Virtual cinema creation, yes. Virtual environment content, yes. Um, and those are the pioneers. Those are people doing it. Look all the way over on the right there, the heavyweights, virtual augmented reality. That was the HoloLens. Now again, you're taking this 100 level class and you're going like, this guy's all over the place. Duh. Because I want to continue to chase the Yankee dollar. You have to be all over. You look at this chart. 3D modeling taught you that. Enterprise VR, you get this implicitly from Spatial IO. Enabling software, what the heck does that mean? We don't know. This stuff comes out more and more. I basically told you, you only got a month's copy. Give me screen captures, but I need to know you put your mind and body through these new programs. Virtual environment creation. Yes, yes, yes. I work on theatrical productions and we're doing this. I've asked you to think about levels of innovation, what we could do to think about what would be innovative in this synchronous, asynchronous sort of portal room that you would create and hopefully do it as if you're not just phoning it in. See this as an exercise of true innovation, not being blasé about it and saying, "Oh, this guy's crazy." Anyway, it's like crazy like a fox. I want to be, which I've often been, on the front end of the bell curve, and achieve consulting fees for it, and hopefully have been a kind of a trendsetter. Um, this whole world of blogging and uh, the little, I forget what this is called, the blogging and micro televising has exploded in the year 2000, but really, really didn't take off until the streaming potentialities now we see in YouTube. This was the interface for the machine stops storyboard. What I learn in the academy, I often apply with the buck chasing world. Um, uh, this is to say that the academy, it's horrific that everything you study has the tinge of ultimate commodification, your GPA, your ability to remember things. But what if these things in my next lecture I'll talk about, what if you've been warehouse? What if these things are no longer relevant? I'm trying to combine the relevant things to give you a leg up in that. Blended learning event, Florence synesthesia. We tried in Florence to blend senses to see what sending these things through digital media we could do. Could it turn a buck? I don't know. It could. I could talk to an R&D, research and development division of a East Asian firm. They tend to be more cowboy country, more able to take risks than Western companies, which I love. Uh, visual design, formation design, information architecture, functional spec. It's got these metrics, these layers, and these graphs. But I keep telling you, the map is not the territory. The territory is something you have to discover. This was that Jesse James Garrett or whatever you had, surface, skeleton, structure, scope, strategy. This is some of the early stuff. They came off of typology, which was Steve Jobs' only real big specialty was typography, believe it or not. And they developed this skeletal layer structure. Path, node, district, edge, landmark is what I'm using to talk about space. Um, and here's the Jesse James Garrett thing about what we see, the wireframes on the bottom. This kind of hierarchy, visual design, user needs, site objectives on the bottom, subconscious stuff, psychology. That's why we get all these funky snake oil salesmen on TED Talks, and people sound like, "What are you talking about?" I hope you're not high in your own supply because it's just crazy talk. But in this hybrid work, um, we have crazy things going on, and academia. These little monastic islands are a perfect place to try these things out. Blah blah blah. As we said, let's go back to this perspective painting by the Renaissance masters. Single point of view, sense of focus, extends, reverses into cubism, multiple points of view at once. Going crazy. But Cubist painters taught us that. Retrieve specialism in high definition. What I kind of want to combine one point perspective in the Rolf Benz room in an immersive environment, but also I want high def. But how can you do it trying to assume that everyone's going to have a cubist perspective from wherever they look in the room? I'm supposed to, as a designer, accommodate, empathize with that. Panoramic scanning, you're in the environment. Like I mentioned that movie 1918 about World War I trench warfare in the span of one day. Aristotle's unity of time and place. Uh, Technology of giving a rendering of an afternoon to a night to a morning of the attack. As Aristotle had said 2,500 years ago, this is important to have this unity of time and space. What do I want to do with these Rolf Benz room? I want to be innovative. I do want to de-skill some of the old dinosaurs who haven't realized the meteor hit already. Plenty of those out there. Um, and just, I want people to be fascinated with the world. Your chasing the Yankee dollar is not a crass thing in itself. To have a critical opinion of it is kind of cool. To chase the Yankee dollar while doing something innovative, using your mind, no better feeling. So on that score, um, here's might as well end up what a professor does. Um, what a working professor does. A professor who's on the streets, has street creds, in an institution, in a monastery, realizing now the institution is becoming deadly close to becoming like a student warehouse racked up with forklifts. A professor extends expertise and specialism. Ta-da! But that has to change over time, especially if it has to change. It will change if the professor still does R&D, research and development, write books, which they should. Otherwise, they are bad professors. Productive. It reverses into tunnel vision and a narrow view and my myopic approach to life. And this is what is killing a very beautiful, dynamic place. My dad designed college campuses. Maybe the college of the future is just a woods, a beautifully manicured, prepared, natural setting where you can walk around with your cell phone and we'll look at little holograms in the woods I've done that with my students. We have the tools already, and then you start to analyze, why am I paying all this money just to sit down on the campus? And certainly people thought of that during COVID. What are we doing here? Is this a monetary and fiscal policy of employment on Eastern Long Island? Yes. How much of it is antiquated? A lot. How many people will we hurt if we change that? People who should be aware, if they saw that film, that about 50% of the existing jobs might go away. Why do we keep making holidays every Monday? This is just the erosion of the 40-hour work week down to 35 and 30, the entry of UBI. Anyway, the professor is supposed to have this with his just neurochemical process, a tunnel vision and a narrow view of a specialized subject. Well, what if no one cares anymore? Truly, what if it is truly of filigreed, myopic uh, uh, thing that, and I love obsolete things. I wish academia was like the Seed Museum in Norway. But the tunnel vision is not good for anyone because markets change, and it is an adult response to be aware of markets. It is childish and childlike to say the market does not affect me. Unfortunately, the market affects everyone. Um, and it doesn't matter what line in the sand you've drawn of the antiquated French Revolution, whether you're left wing or right wing, to determine this. The markets are in an adult homeostasis. What did professing as an interlocutor? I tend to think, and here it is, that I'm a midwife, I'm a Virgilian guide, I'm a person who goes up and down and shows you quality things, shows you how to mash this stuff up, leads you to a degree of hybridity, inspires you to become autodidacts for the rest of your life. So I'm more like the grounds crew at this new university where everyone's walking around with their cell phone and trying to make them resist looking at TikTok. It retrieves the priesthood, the village says. Really? Maybe. Um, I tend to think that universities, if they will survive, clearly after COVID, should be focused on research, professing as Virgilian guides, and young people and old people who want to come in on not busting the bank to come in, but to dip in and out of these great natural resources where they're incentivized to study with other people with different topics. What is professing obsolescence? Dilettantism and ignorance. Really? Those two things always make their comeback. So that's it. I'm moving from the right tool for the right job, as the eighth grade shop teacher said in his industrial era mentality. Um, we have the one tool, we have the one box, we have the one thing in the form of a cell phone. I wanted to create the one cube inside a house, which is projected. Oh, great piece to watch. I have this on my syllabus. Uh, the Velt by Ray Bradbury, describe a piece written in late 40s, and it's just amazingly trenchant now about a family, a nuclear family that has this immersive environment in their space that's run by AI that can transport them to different places, and the kids get all bratty. And decide to hang out in the African veldt, a dangerous place, and then they lure the adults into this space. That'll be enough of that without a spoiler alert. Um, so there you have it. The different areas in which we performer, stage, transmedia output, yay. Spectator, audience area, transmedia output. And whenever we look at a new old medium, we see these things, the rear view mirror. Film theory, the aspects has exactly all of these. I went through this in another piece. So das ist alles. I hope that was stimulating. This idea of designing for commerce, very similar to designing for arts and not for profit. Try and always pay yourself. Sometimes you do have to take a risk and just design on spec. Don't be robbed, though, of your beautiful ideas. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.